Really, people make things very complicated. When I started consulting more than 10 people a month on trading, I realized that only those who don't complicate their strategy can make money. I had the analytics of the whole previous marathon, which I spent just from 500 to 2500, and I hope that my today's main card will allow you to get all the information in more structured way. My friends, as I always, the most basic thing I always start with is finding areas of interest. You go to any chart and use whatever tools you used to. I use, let's say, LuxAlgo. It is a smart money concept indicators that you can add to TradingView just by one-click search. That's it. No additional settings we are required for this indicator. We have a weekly low definite. This is our 15-minute time frame, and in general this is our first zone of interest with which we can work. Next, my friends, all you do is look for triggers. Of course, the zone of interest can be distributed or drawn in completely different ways. The most important thing is that you understand what a zone of interest is. For those who do not understand, I will say that the zone of interest is a certain area where we have either buyers or sellers. On the example of this chart, it is very easy to assume where we have a seller, because let's say here, we have received deep pullbacks. This means that there is a seller at the horizontal level who benefits from selling at this price. It doesn't matter what for what reasons or why he does it. We are not interested in at all. The most important thing is that the next time we go to the upper zone of interest, or as now to the lower zone of interest, and our task is to be alert and start looking for triggers. And we will talk about triggers in the second, third and so on paragraphs. This is, by the way, my first trade. Look, it is very simple. We can switch with you to the 5-minute time frame, turn off this indicator, which we are not interested in because we already have the drawn zones. And we pay attention to the very first trigger, namely the trend line. You can also switch to a linear type of chart and build a trend line perfectly, but I think it is not secret that we have a breakout and a retest of the trend line. Here we have a retest, and moreover a certain bullish pattern is formed here, which says that most likely the next movement will be upward. Of course, I'm calmly enter a long position here. This is my first trade. I also use the imbalance indicator. You can also add it in the search by searching for the name. Here is this indicator, imbalance zone, from the author called Frozen. This indicator immediately shows me where to place take profit. This is the last point, and let's say I'm a very conservative trader. I always take achievable goals. Of course, you can set the goal of achieving this area, but I act a little more conservative and I move my stop loss behind this level. So we have a trade about 1-to-1. Which for me is considered quite enough. This is my first trade. I have a balance of 500, and since the risk here is quite high, namely 50% per trade, I have to be as confident in this trade as possible. Here's what I'm getting. We're quickly reaching a sufficient take profit, given that this is a 5-minute time frame. Here is this trade. I broadcast everything in my Telegram channel, and on this trade I earned 358. Let me see. Yes, here in this trade 358 we earned on it. And agree with me that this is a very simple and quite basic situation. So guys, let's move on to the second trade on which I earned in my marathon. We open again our checklist, and the first thing is the search for key zones of interest. I see 2 such zones on the 15-minute time frame. Of course, we turn out indicator back on. We see the low, which we also have as a zone of interest. And in general, everything on top I'm not interested in yet, because the chart is more on the lower side. Let's see how this plays out. We are touching the zone of interest. I switch back to the 5-minute time frame, and here I can work further with triggers. I see a very similar pattern here. Most likely we will be able to draw a trend line here. Let's try it. Here we have the first trend line. It even reminds me a little bit of a wedge, at the lower boundary of which we are now. But what happens next? The next is that the chart just breaks through this descending wedge, breaks through our zone of interest, and here, of course, we didn't wait for any exit from the trend line. There was no exit here, there was no trade, But now there is an excellent basis for opening short positions. Also, imbalance indicator shows us where the chart can go. I obviously adjust my stop loss and take profit already based on the previous drawings. I understand that beyond this zone of interest my trade is cancelled, so the stop loss is here. I put take profit here. There is some trend line here. We can easily hit it before we start to bounce on some older time frame. The chart can look calmly like this. There is another trend line. We may reach it in the future. So guys, we have defined the zone of interest, the triggers. This is our second trigger. These are technical analysis patterns. And we have already defined the take profit. Of course, if there was a more obvious imbalance zone, like here, it would be much more attractive. But let's see how this trade closed. And this trade worked quickly and very confidently breaks through all horizontal levels, and we come to the next zone of interest, from which we can now trade and try to enter the trade on the reversal. On this position I earned 853, and you will be surprised, but this is a key position that allows me to significantly increase my balance from 858 to about 1600. And the risk here was also 50% per trade. Moving on to the third position. Let's not get too long. Let's move on to the third trade. This is a short which I made 800 on. And guys, this is also absolutely the easiest and simplest trade. Look at how it looks. What to do in a situation like this? We see a pronounced downward movement on the global trend. I think everything is clear here. That is, we are moving confidently downwards, and we have just broken through a very important zone of interest. Again, returning to the first point of our checklist, and this zone of interest is in fact now a resistance level for us, because we are under this zone. We can continue to watch the development of the chart, but right now I can see that we are approaching the support that was just broken, and that means that we can safely place a limit with you here ahead of time to short to the trend from here. I connect the imbalance zone indicators, realizing that relying on this indicator I will only be able to place my stop loss, because take profit obviously I will place it either on the update of this minimum or over this zone. But to be honest, I don't have a strong idea what this zone is, so I place take profit just over the minimum to make it a normal safe trade. We can switch with you to the 5-minute time frame and disable any unnecessary indicators. The trigger here could also be the formation of a candlestick pattern called a bearish engulf. This is simply just an additional reason to continue its downward movement now from the retest of this area. You realize that fundamentally my thoughts are very simple and logical. Look at how quickly this trade is working itself out. I was honestly a little bit shocked with it, but this trade allowed me to finally shift my risk to 30% of my balance, and I started to trade calmly. From this trade, my risk was 30% and it brought me 800 net. Now let's move on to the next position. Let's move on to the fourth trade of my marathon. Look, I also include this indicator additionally. You can see that here we have important zones of interest from below. That is, we pay attention that here in the future we can have either take profit or on the contrary stop loss, depending on what trade we will open. I also decided that the most obvious zone is here. It is not marked by the indicator, but this is the area that was once a support level for our chart at this point. Now we have a technical analysis figure. It is a fallen wedge or even the fallen parallel channel. The upper and lower lines, but they are almost parallel, so it's not a big deal. Let's observe the chart development here. In theory, we can break through, or on the contrary, we can meet resistance in this area. I now realize that the chart looks very much as if it does not want to break this trend line, because look how active this movement was here and how much it is starting to fade right now. And lately it has been moving more in a downward direction, so we have a triangle forming here, which could easily break the flat boundary. Well, and this is all. If you know about candlestick patterns, the prefigure of technical analysis, this is all the base that you need to know at least a little bit. Let's see how the chart will develop, but in general it seems to me that it is already clearly fading. This resistance area is quite obvious for us. Plus a bearish pattern has already been formed here, if you talk about candlestick analysis. That's why I open a down trade here in advance. It is clear that the take can be quite update of this minimum, but I will put somewhere here, or just near here, or is our zone of interest. The bodies of this candlestick, and the stop loss will not be so small. I will include the imbalance zone and see where it can be put. I think that behind this zone I will remove this stop loss and everything will be great. Let's turn off all the indicators and see how the trade works out. Look, even the minimum we are hitting, that's very good, because I'm closing my first trade with a terrific risk and profit ratio, and on this trade I earned 1,293. My friends, I don't want to waste a lot of your time, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that all the last trades were made absolutely according to the same plan, which I have been telling you about all the time. Moreover, all the trades could be copied by you absolutely automatically, including minus trades. But you are absolutely not afraid of them, because just read the feedback that the subscribers of this marathon have received. I created a public strategy and all people connected with approximately the same balance and copied my trades. I think most have gotten over 2,000 in profit, and this is all possible because of public copy trading. So if you want me to hook you up with an account, follow the link from the description. About all the other trades, what can I say? You can see them in my Telegram channel, described in detail what was done and why. But even if you just open screenshots of these trades, you will realize that here and here and here we have just a strategy of trading, breakout and retest. Yes, we have identified the key zone. I see that we have broken through this key zone, we have tested it, and after that we continue the upward movement that we had before. Nothing complicated, you just pick zones of interest, pick a trigger that you are comfortable to work with, and lock in your profit. Thank you for watching this video, my friends. Subscribe to my channel to not miss new strategies and my analytics.